Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana and today I'm here to bring you the LGBTQIA Booktube Tag. This tag was created by Danika from Danika Ellis, aka The Lesbrary, and I was tagged by Cece from Problems of a Book Nerd. I will link both of their editions of this tag down below, so please check them both out. To give you a bit of background on this tag, it was created in response to some recent conversations on book Twitter, and of course I was a part of those, and basically what it boils down to is that allo cishet reviewers were once again centering their hot takes on whether or not queer lit should be disclosed as queer lit in book reviews, which I don't even know why that's a debate. And frankly, it was just exhausting for so many of us queer reviewers who are continuously being hurt and who continuously have to repeat ourselves, and we kind of figured out between us that the real problem is that the glass ceiling when it comes to queer reviewers is a very real thing, and clearly not enough people are actually following queer reviewers, because if they were, they would quickly realize how inane, unnecessary, and hurtful these discussions really are. So all of that culminated in the creation of this tag, which is meant to help people discover queer reviewers. It allows us to introduce ourselves and our content on our own terms, and it also functions as like a get to know me for queer booktubers, which is really neat. With all of that said, let's finally get to question number one. How do you identify? On a day-to-day basis, I just refer to myself as queer. It's quick, it's easy, it's accessible, it doesn't really leave any room for argument or discussion, and more importantly, it's inclusive of all my identities, and it just gets the point across. Down below, I will link an incredible Twitter thread by Melanie Gilman where they talk about why the term queer is the word they prefer, why it feels safer and more inclusive, and I completely agree with everything they have to say, so definitely give that a look. But if we're being more specific, my personal trifecta of identities is gender non-binary, and yes, I do use they, them, their pronouns. It's in every single one of my bios. I also identify as pansexual and aromantic. Question number two, what are some of your favorite queer books and authors? For this, I'm just going to quickly list them off because I've talked about all of these books and people numerous times on my channel at length, so I just want this to be a quick recap. Of course, we have Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, Juliet Takes a Breath, The Song of Achilles, The Captive Prince Trilogy, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, George, the entire Gives Light series, the Nine Fox Gambit series, The Abyss Surrounds Us, Santa Olivia, and Not Your Sidekick. As for authors, we have the incomparable Benjamin Alere Sainz, Gabby Rivera, Alex Gino, C.S. Pacat, Rose Christo, C.B. Lee, Yoonha Lee, Anna Marie McClemore, and Adam Silvera. Question number three, how often do you talk about queer books on your channel, and which videos of yours would you recommend people start with if they're looking for queer book content? I have so many videos where I explicitly focus on queer books. We have my How We Talk About Diversity and Queer Lit discussion. I did my A to Z of Queer Lit video, the Love Wins book tag. For discussions, I have my Let's Talk Coming Out and Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, Let's Talk Representation and Mask of Shadows, and I have a ton of individual reviews for queer books and series. And I will add this, if you click on pretty much any video on my channel, especially a wrap-up, you will find me talking about something queer, at least one queer book, if not more. And when I make tag videos, top 5 videos, or list videos of any kind, I make a point to include queer books. Question number four, who are your favorite queer booktubers? Fair warning, this is where I'm going to spend a majority of my time in this video, since networking and spreading the love for other queer content creators is the entire point. I thought it would only be fitting to start off with Danika from Danika Ellis, who is also the creator and founder of The Lesbrary, which is an incredible queer resource where you can find recommendations and reviews of books about lesbian, bi, and queer women. I stumbled upon Danika and her blog at a very early stage in my booktube life when I really needed a resource like that, and there weren't that many sites out there at the time providing that kind of service. And even though now they've branched off into other channels and sites and social media platforms, Danika and her team still remain a really great resource. Next is Cece from Problems of a Book Nerd. She is one of my favorite humans. Not only does she allow herself to be vocal and passionate and downright geeky about the stories she loves across all mediums, but I can see she also prioritizes spotlighting queer and marginalized voices, and I just have such a deep respect for people with a following of that magnitude who still use their platform to try and make a difference. Next up is Joseph from The Boy Who Cried Books. He's one of my fellow queer Latinos. I love him so much because he's not afraid to just turn on the camera or go on Twitter and say, Hey y'all, I'm feeling so fucking gay today, and bruh, I relate. But he's also super badass because I believe it was last year that he did his year of queer, where he read nothing but queer books for the entirety of 2016, and that level of commitment says everything you need to know. Then there's Chris from Chris Vigilante or Vigilante Reads. I love Chris so much. I have such a healthy respect for them because I know I can click on any one of their videos and I'll find a ton of great recommendations for underrated indie queer books and authors, queer webcomics, queer graphic novels, queer music, queer films. I just love that at any given time, Chris is reading and reviewing queer stuff. Then there's Paige from Enchantology. I love that Paige is so outspoken about issues affecting queer books and queer reviewers, especially on Twitter. She's not afraid to speak her mind and call people out on their bullshit, which is exactly what we need. But more than that, she's always been one of my go-tos when it comes to great SFF recommendations. Whether a book is queer or not, I know if Paige enjoys an SFF release, it is very likely that I will also enjoy it myself. Next is one of my favorite new booktubers and also like my new best friend, at least we're best friends in my mind, and that is Matthew from Matthew Sharapa. This boy is magic. He is the funshine bear to my cheer bear. I love him so much. He has a theater background and he's a bookseller, so he definitely brings that charisma, that passion, that knowledge to every video he does. What I love most about Matthew is that while yes, there is a significant overlap in our taste in books, and while I can always depend on him for really awesome, unique recommendations, he doesn't even have to be talking about a book I know, a book I've ever heard of in my life, a book I'm even remotely interested in. As long as he's on camera speaking, I am listening. I am all ears. He has that magic special quality that makes me want to listen to everything he says. And usually when people bring up books that I don't know or don't care about or will never ever read, I speed up the video or I skip ahead. And I have never in my life passed over any of Matthew's videos or missed a second of what he's said. And that is the highest compliment I can give. Then we have Mike from Slice of Mike, who actually helped me discover Matthew. So thank you, Mike. Mike is amazing, incredible, intelligent, thoughtful. He can be creative because he makes artsy fartsy videos from time to time. He is hilarious as hell, and his whole "I'm 2 seconds from giving up on life, but what can you do" demeanor is my aesthetic. Then we have Sue from Sue's Book Nook. She is authentic and so true to herself. She knows exactly what she likes. She reads a lot of dark post-apocalyptic horror type novels. She likes classics. She reads a lot of manga, which is what I initially followed her for, and she also does all of her videos in one take, and they feel very engaging and inviting, not at all awkward, which is very hard to pull off. Then there's Ashley from Tea Leaves and Bookbindings. She is one of my favorite queer girls. She is always holding it down on queer book Twitter, and our taste in books is very similar. In fact, she recently did a video on SFF books with female-female relationships, and pretty much every book she brought up in that video is one that I would recommend myself. Next is George from George Lester. Again, very charismatic, very passionate, very excitable. He reads pretty much nothing but queer stuff, especially queer UKYA, so I get a lot of recommendations for that from him. And he also was the one who created the A to Z of queer books video. And last but certainly not least is Luce from Things Lucy Reads, one of the original booktubers in my queer booktube squad. She has been talking about queer lit for far longer than I have, and she was the one who originated the discussion on the booktube code of silence, which unfortunately we are still debating to this day. Her anger is so validating and so delicious. She's also someone who's always holding it down on queer book Twitter, which I really appreciate, but she's also really dedicated to spreading queer positivity to all corners of the internet. So that was a lot of people. I very well may have forgotten some, but everybody will be linked down below. Question number 5. When was the first time you encountered a queer character in fiction? This question is kind of hard to answer because there was a very large portion of my life where I did not care about queer representation and where I didn't know what it would mean to myself because I always just assumed I was very straight and very cis, so I was never on the lookout for that kind of thing. So I'm afraid that like the first time I really encountered an explicitly queer character in fiction is just something that I don't remember. So I'm gonna kind of tweak this question to talk about the first meaningful time I encountered a queer character in fiction, and of course if you know anything about me, you know the answer is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Elere Sainz. The reason this character resonated so strongly with me was very simple. He was Mexican American and queer at the same time, which I very rarely see even to this day. So he wasn't Mexican enough, he wasn't American enough, and he was actually living in fear and denial to the point where he was hurting himself because he couldn't admit he wasn't straight. It was a very personal reading experience for me that really hit home in a way I think a lot of other readers will never understand, which is why I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if it's not a perfect story. I don't care if it's not for everyone. This book saved my life. And finally, question number 6. Do you have anything to add and who do you tag? Like Cece said in her video, just support queer creators. Erasure and invisibility are very real issues that we still have to deal with to this day, along with the expectation that we have to reassert ourselves and our identities every single day. As I said before, there is a very real glass ceiling when it comes to queer content creators, especially queer reviewers, so taking steps to consciously diversify your feed does make a difference. Furthermore, when we speak out about something, listen. Just listen. The thoughts and feelings and opinions of people outside of this community are virtually useless, so stop centering yourselves in conversations that directly affect us. And lastly, we as queer content creators, we're out here, we're doing the work all day, every day. And doing the work doesn't necessarily mean like fighting the good fight, protesting, being angry, talking about queer issues. I mean, we're out here making quality ass content for you. So support us. And as for people I tag, with the exception of those of you who have done this tag already, I tag everybody I mentioned in this video. I don't typically say this, but if you enjoyed this video, please consider sharing it with your bookish friends. And if you are also a queer reader, I would love to hear your answers to any of these questions in the comments below. But that is everything I had for this book tag today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye.